to kick things off, we're joined today by myself. I'm the product marketing manager at Vercel. I'm based in San Francisco, and I've been focusing on bringing collaboration workflow features to all of our users.
Hey, I'm Rich Haynes. I'm the director of docs here at Vercel. I lead a documentation team for Vercel and Next doc sites.
Hey, I'm Matt. I'm a sales engineer working here at Vercel. I'm based in Oxford in the UK. I've got a background working with media and sports agencies, so this kind of collaborative feedback is something I'm super excited to demo.
Q, Vercel preview deployments now with commenting. So the key here is really our Vercel preview deploys, and now with commenting, it's basically like a Google Doc for your web project. So for context, preview deployments are auto-created with every Git push, so you get a shareable preview site that's always up to date. And the reason we're all here with commenting now, any collaborators, no matter their technical capabilities, can give feedback directly on components, copy, interactive elements in the actual production context, the context that your end users will be seeing. So with that being said, let's get into a demo of what that looks like.
What I've done for today's demo is I've actually set up a standard Next.js example of a CMS from this documentation here. So in my particular case, I've taken a CMS and I'm using Dato CMS. Okay, so just so you know what, if you want to follow along, this is what we've got. So we'll share a link to this example in the comments. It's worth pointing out here that I've used Next.js, but as Perry was saying, this is not a Next.js feature. This is a Vercel feature. So this will work on any framework that you decide to use on Vercel. Okay. The second piece of housekeeping is everything I'm going to show you today is very beautifully documented inside our comments documentation that Rich and his team have put together. I'm going to be referencing this a few times throughout the demo. So again, we'll put this in the chat below so that you guys can reference that as well as we go through. Great. So with the housekeeping out of the way, let's go straight into it. So what we've got in front of us here is this is a project that I set up ahead of time, as discussed, and this is just running on my own sandbox environment in Vercel. I've already ahead of time created a feature branch, and I've created a pull request for that feature branch, and that is now deployed on Vercel as a preview deployment. So that's all been done ahead of time, just so I can show you the key functionality of the preview comments. Okay, so the first point that we need to tackle is how do we activate this functionality on our preview deployments? So that's really simple. We come into our settings up here within the project. We open that up and we scroll down. And it's just here, preview comments, and it's a simple toggle on and off to activate this for all the preview branches on your deployment, on your project. If you toggle this either on or off, then you might be asked to redeploy your particular branch or your deployment just to activate that functionality. But in our case, it's already activated in preparation for this demo. Okay, let's go back to my project. Right, so how does that look? So let's go over to my preview deployment. This is the one I prepared earlier as discussed. So the first thing to notice here is we have a toolbar down here. And this is the main sort of area where we're going to work with the preview comments. Now, something worth pointing out is I've got a black image here and it's a black toolbar. That's not a problem. We can move this around as we see fit. Obviously, we can move this wherever we want on the page to give us that interactivity. But I personally, even on the black background, I like to keep it down here. Okay. So fundamentally, this is a collaboration tool. We're looking to collaborate with as many people as possible. We're looking to collaborate with technical and non-technical people. So at the moment, this is looking pretty lonely in here. I'm all on my own. So the first thing I'm going to do is share this with my team. Okay, so the way we do this is in this toolbar. We open this up on the share, and we can grab this link and we can share it via Slack or whatever else it might be. By default, you'll see that this is limited to team members on Vercel. So if I were to share this, the only people that will be able to access this at the moment are people that are registered as team members in my sandbox environment. Oftentimes, you're not going to want to do that. You're going to want to share it with maybe your editorial team or marketing team, people that maybe have got no interest in logging into the Vercel backend at all. They just want to work on CMS changes, content changes, e-commerce product changes, things of that type. So that's easy to achieve. We toggle this, and then we can grab the link and we can send it to people. Okay, so once you've done that, you send it off, done. And now, as we can see here, I've already got, I can already see Perry's logged in because I shared this link with her previously. Something else I wanted to point out on that, obviously we've made this public, for want of a better term. That's not always going to be desirable. I think in some cases you might want to password protect that preview deployment. So what I've actually done prior to setting this up was I've actually password protected that via my settings in Vercel. So if you were to try and log in now to this URL, you should be hit up with an authentication required. You can also optionally add SSO protection to that as part of the settings in Vercel. Okay. So where we're at now is I've got my collaborators down here, so I can see they're all online. We've got the colored circles. So let's start collaborating. So the first thing we want to do is add a comment, start a thread. Okay, so how do we do that? We've got two ways of doing that. We can, one, come down here, click on this, and it activates our tooltip for commenting. Alternatively, you can just hit C on your keyboard, and that activates it as well. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to make a little comment over here. Okay, now I can see that Rich is on board, so I'm just going to name him in this one because I know it's going to be him that's going to action this change. So I'm going to say, Rich, I think we're missing a full stop. Okay, and then I'm just going to hit send on that. So what's happened here? All right, so in real terms, in the background, what's happened is, okay, I've got this here. I've got this in the UI. Anyone logged into this UI is going to see this. They're also going to be able to open up the box, the inbox, as it were, the threads, and you're going to be able to see what's actioning here and all the different threads. As you can see, I've been notified because Rich has actually already replied. So he's going to action this one now, which is wonderful. But what's also happening is offline communication. So this is a great interface. We can interact when we're all online, but obviously we're not always all going to be online, and we don't want people to miss the action and what's happening on this particular pull request. So what's happened here behind the scenes is, as the owner of the pull request, I'm going to be receiving emails anytime there's updates to the comments and the threads. Rich is now involved in this particular thread, and therefore he'll also be emailed when this happens. Any changes that reference him, he's going to be emailed offline. So we have 2 touch points already, and we're starting to grow this collaboration. The frequency with which we receive those notifications can be changed via the context menu here. Alternatively, you have some more granular control. So if we go down here to our settings in the menu and into the preferences, we can now actually manipulate the notifications as well to be more granular and match what our needs are. Okay, great. So we've got some good conversations going on over here. This is nice. Okay, brilliant. All right, so that's great. So we've got our 2 touch points, but maybe 2's not enough. I don't know. Let's have a look. Some of you may have noticed I've got a Slack channel going up here. So I referenced earlier in the documentation that there are a few things I would point you to. One of them is Vercel's beta Slack integration for this functionality. The documentation will cover how that works. I set it up ahead of time. It's super simple. But what you'll see is inside my Slack, which I'm using the browser version, you can see this thread is now happening in Slack as well. And indeed, you can see the whole collaboration is happening in there. Perry's agreed with that. And I'm just going to do something super simple like, thanks, let me know. Great. So I'm going to hit that, and I would expect that to also be available in my thread. And indeed, there it is. So now we have 3 touch points. We've got our UI where we're all online. That's great. We've got Slack, so the conversation can happen inside Slack, and we've got our email notifications as well. So we've got these 3 touch points, and this collaboration is growing all the time. Okay, let's take that a little bit further. So I've created the comment here. I want to create it further down the page. So I'm going to go ahead here, and honestly, I don't like the way this is rolling. I don't like how busy this all looks. So I'm gonna add a comment here. Okay, maybe we can remove this. I'm going to pick on Rich again. Sorry, Rich. And I'm going to say, hey, Rich, this is a bit busy, but I don't want to be rude. So let's use some emojis. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. Please, can we remove the excerpt? Okay, and just because I'm linked into Slack, I can also use one of my previously configured personalized Slack emojis. Okay, and this is great. So we're starting to add a bit of character to the flow. Everyone likes personality. Now, this is good, but I'm still lacking some context. So if I was to, if Rich was to take this offline, he gets it on Slack, or if he gets it via email, he's going to know by the time he's clicked on the various links, he's going to come here, he's going to find a comment. He's going to be missing a bit of context. So we can add to this context, we can improve this flow. And we've done that. Again, I'm going to reference the documentation, but the documentation will step you through the Chrome extension that we've made available. I've already installed it for the purposes of this demo. Let's go ahead and see what that does. So that extension simply allows us to essentially navigate the DOM and take a little screen grab. So in this case, I'm going to grab this one, and that's going to add that to my comment. And now when Rich receives this, he's going to have a lot more context. So how does this look in real terms? Inside the comment, I've got it here. I can expand it and I can see it. I can go to my inbox and I can scroll and I can start to see things. And again, we're getting more contextualization here. Okay, so this is good. We're improving that communication. We're removing doubt. We're removing need to iterate. Okay, but if we take that offline, how does that look? So now we're in our Slack integration. And as someone who's just in Slack, you might be on your mobile, you're going to see exactly what's being talked about. You're going to know if it's a priority, and you're going to know exactly the context in which you're working. And this is going to slow down the need for, this is going to remove the need for constant feedback and getting on the phone and which bit did you mean? We're removing that need to slow down. And then if we continue along the theme of contextualizing, okay, I've noticed here, yeah, okay, cool. So I've noticed here that Rich has created another comment, and he's saying this is too big on mobile. Can we make it smaller? Okay, okay. So this is great, but now, yeah, Rich has created this, and you know, he's put this on mobile, but I don't know what mobile device he's on. Okay, so you know, as we all know, mobile devices are varied. Are we talking about an iPad? Are we talking about an iPhone? What are we talking about? Thankfully, if we hover over here, we get the tooltip, and the tooltip's going to tell us a little bit of information about what device that comment was created on. So I can see here that it's been created on a smaller window size with a pixel ratio of 2. Okay, so we can start to have that context and again eliminate the need to just loop over the same content to get the same feedback.
Yeah, I think another good point here, if there's anyone on a marketing team on the call, I know personally for me, when we've done like implementing a new blog or things like that, and you see the design in Figma, and sometimes it just looks different on different screens and different browsers. So this way you're able to, you know, pull more people into this feedback loop. That way, if someone's seeing maybe a color actually doesn't have as much contrast as you thought it did when rendering on a specific browser, you're able to know exactly like where that's looking different than you intended and make that fix directly. So this has been super useful just within like that implementing new design phases on our marketing team as well.
Great. Cool. Okay, so we've talked about the 3 touch points, the UI, the email, the Slack. There's other ways we can share and collaborate. Okay, so let's take this example that Rich has created here. And if we just want to send it, if we want to be quick about things, we can just copy this link and we can send it. You know, we can just hit it over to someone and they're gonna land in here, and it's going to take them to the exact point in the where the comment is, so they can start to work and collaborate as well. Obviously, they need permissions at this point, as we stepped through at the beginning, but just to show that's one way of doing it. So far, I'm very keen to underline here that so far everything we've shown is not related to code. So this can be your editorial team making these comments. It can be your marketing team. It can be a various number of people, but no one needs to know how to code at this point. However, we don't want to leave coders out, obviously. So you may have noticed up here, we have a link directly to your GitHub pull request. So in this case, I've used GitHub. This is also supporting GitLab, Bitbucket, and everything else via the Vercel CLI. Okay, just to make that clear. If we go ahead and open that up and see what this looks like. Okay, so I've opened this in a different tab. So this is my pull request. Okay, and you'll see down here that actually we've got some failed checks. Now, where have these come from? These have come from our these checks are coming from the commenting. Okay, so actually this isn't coming from the commenting. Aha, okay. Well, what we should have seen is that the comments until they're resolved will leave feedback within your pull request, Matt, showing
you can see it on the PR if you go back there. Just in the Vercel bot, if you scroll up.
Yeah, got unresolved. Thank you.
Unresolved.
Yeah, let's go there. Thank you, Rich. Okay, so that's going to take us in there. So that wasn't quite the integration I was expecting at that point. But again, you've got the feedback directly inside the PR. So we've got that integration there. So what we have then is we're now integrating this into our development flow as well. Okay, so we've got the sort of, let's say, the non-technical touch points, and we've got the technical touch point. Okay, so what we need to do next is discuss how we actually go ahead and resolve these. Okay, so in this case here, so I'm just going to close this up so I keep my flow going here. Okay, I'm just going to refresh that to make sure we're all good. Okay, cool. So I've got this comment here, and I'm just going to go ahead and assume that this has been fixed. Okay, so something to point out here is that any pushes that are made to this PR whilst we're doing this, whilst we're looking at this UI, it will be updated, and so it will persist in between deployments. So this preview deployment for the PR was created as we make these changes, as we make some of these suggested changes, and that deployment is updated on Vercel. These comments will persist until they're resolved. Okay, so the way that looks is if I go in and open up this particular one, I can go ahead and resolve it. Okay, and if I come in here, I can do the same here and resolve it. And if we go back to our Slack integration, you can see this is also resolving it here. So we can reopen it, or we can resolve it, all within our Slack integration, or within the UI here. Okay, so if I just open that up again. Yeah, I don't know what I've done here, but sadly I can't demo that. But what I would expect to be seeing is as I resolve these, you can see here we've got one unresolved, and so we're going to get that feedback directly inside our Git integration. Okay, so again, we have all those different touch points now, and that's just helping this flow be as collaborative as possible. Okay, great. So we've touched on the touch points, we've touched on collaboration, and we've been through the Slack integration and how we can take screen grabs. Okay, so with all the tools we make here, we're looking to improve the flow. We don't want to interrupt your flow in any way. So we started off at the outset saying how you can activate this for all your preview deployments. But there are some cases where you're not going to want it active in certain scenarios. So let's step through that. So again, if I come down to my context menu here, if I open this up, you can see that I can actually hide this live overlay. So I'm on a Mac, so I can do it with the with this shortcut, or I can just hide it like this. Okay. So where's that useful? that's useful if you're, I mean, there are many examples where it could be useful, but one that springs to mind is if I just want to take a screen grab and send it out and I don't want the preview comments there. Okay. Another option for hiding this is to disable it for the session. Again, there are a few different reasons you might want to do that. You might be wanting to run some automated tests against it. You might be wanting to, again, take screen grabs. It's a similar use case. But what will happen here is if I refresh here, you're not going to see it. But if you open a new tab, put it in there, you're going to see it just fine as expected. Okay, so it's just starting a new tab, and I'm just going to move it over here for my own sanity. There you go. Okay, so if we take a step back, I mentioned automated testing. So again, we don't want this tool to get in your way. So there is some automation here that it recognizes, the preview comments recognizes if you're running something like a Google Lighthouse test, or if the request is coming from a bot or from like a headless browser. So there's automation in place there that will recognize that and drop the functionality so it doesn't get in your way. However, you may also want to completely disable it for a specific branch. So I'll give you an example here. If I duplicate this, I set this up ahead of time. Let's just remove the thread just to make sure I don't get myself in any muddles. Okay. And I'm going to go for. Okay. So in this case, what I've done is I've actually created a separate branch where I've deactivated preview comments. Now, you might want to do this. One use case could be a real pre-prod environment that you want to put in front of a client, for example. And you don't want to run into any awkward conversations about, is that preview comment part of my final deployment? Who knows? There can be a number of things here, but you may have use cases where you want to disable it completely. So the way we achieve that is if we come back into our Vercel dashboard and we come to the settings, we go to the environment variables and scroll down. You'll have the Vercel preview feedback enabled, and this is simply set to 0. And I've applied this to a specific feature branch. And that's it. So just to be clear, there's no need to update your code on this. This is something that just works out of the natural settings of Vercel and this functionality. Okay. Final pieces to show is just some nice functionality in here. Again, if I come down to the menu, ping that open. Please give us feedback. We're very receptive to feedback. We always want to make things better. You can hit the pull request directly. This will open it in a new tab. The view project will take you to the project in Vercel. And then if we go into the preferences, we mentioned the notifications earlier. You can change the theme if you prefer a dark styling. And then the Chrome extension, if you want to add that in. And then finally, I've already been through the onboarding for this product. So I've been through it. But if you want to reset it, then you can go through and you have the context of the product. And that's everything from me in this demo. So Perry, did I miss anything?
I've seen a few questions about who can collaborate or who can comment. Can you talk about who is available to, or who is able to become a collaborator?
Yeah, sure. So if we go back in here and we look at the sharing, so this is something we touched on before. So essentially anyone with a link means quite literally that. So just to be clear on that, you don't need to be a member of, you don't have to have a Vercel account to collaborate, essentially. There are options there, but generally speaking, anyone can collaborate. If we were to then toggle this to set it to team members only, then that brings in a different sort of a use case where you've got, you need to be a team member. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be a paid team member. You do have, we have the roles-based access. So we have people like the viewer role who wouldn't need to be a team member who would be able to access this even because they've got an account on Vercel.
Nice.
Okay. Any other questions or shall I hand over?
I think we'll leave the rest of the questions for the end. And yeah, let's hand over to Rich.
Brilliant. Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Cool beans. Cheers, Matt. Okay, you can see.
Yes.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how we used to work before comments. And basically, this is like a project I've set up. It's just a template you can get from Vercel, MDX documentation template with Nextra. So I work on the docs team here at Vercel. We use MDX to write our content, hence the example. MDX is a way of writing Markdown for content that allows you to use React components that are embedded within the content itself. So traditionally, when we review pull requests, we do it via a combination of GitHub pull request diffs and preview deployments. This includes all written copy and visual elements such as images, diagrams, and interactive components. And so a GitHub diff, if you don't know, when you open a pull request on GitHub, you're making some changes to some code or a page or a file or whatever. But the diff is where you have, like, on the left-hand side is the content as it originally was, and on the right-hand side, you have the changes that you've made to it. So that's what we call a diff. So our flow would generally involve opening a pull request. One of the team members on the docs team would open a pull request. They would then share that pull request and a preview deployment for review in Slack. This is kind of a slow process. It involves the creator pushing their changes, getting the preview link, getting the PR link, posting it in Slack, tagging stakeholders for review. Yeah, it's kind of slow. So I mean, it's not so slow, but it is slow and it's a little bit annoying. Now, while copy can be reviewed and feedback left in the PR diffs, images, diagrams, and interactive components require us to open up a preview side by side with the GitHub diff. And say we wanted to review an image, for example, we'd then have to go back to GitHub diff, try and locate it, leave the feedback there. And this kind of means scrolling, searching the diff for the heading located where the image is, finding the correct one to leave feedback on. If it sounds complicated, it's because it is. I'm going to show you an example now of how that looks. So on the left-hand pane, you can see the GitHub diff of a PR. Like I said before, the left column is the content as it was. The right column is what the developer or content creator has made changes to. And the right-hand pane here, just make my window bigger, is the preview deployment from these changes. Now, I'm scrolling through, I'm giving a review, and I come across this image. And I think it's too far to the left. I think it should be centered. It will look better centered. So the normal way I would do this would be to kind of find a heading where that image is located so that I could easily locate it in the PR. I scroll down, it's called subheading, got features. I can see subheading here. I can see image, so this is the image. And then I would leave a comment in the PR. So can we center this image, please? And I would leave my comment that way, and so on and so forth, with everything kind of visual I would want to review for this. So I'm a technical person, and I'm having to find the exact place in diff where the image is located. And you can imagine if someone's from another team, maybe they're not so technical, and they want to review this, and this is kind of the process they would have to go through to offer feedback. So once I found the image in the GitHub diff, I would comment as I did there. Maybe the image was too pixelated, or it needed editing because it didn't like include the correct area we want to highlight. Maybe it didn't match any of our designs in Figma, as Perry was mentioning. And this kind of flow, it involves a lot of context switching. And being able to review within the context of the page is like super valuable. When we have to leave the page to go and find a section in the PR, it kind of takes us out of our review flow. And at the end of the day, it's a technical way of reviewing things. And the same thing applies for interactive components. Like by their nature, when you're going to review them, you have to kind of interact with them to kind of know that they're working. And when we review them, we do the same process as we do with images. And this often means searching the diff for the copy, closest component, a header, or some supporting text. So let's jump over and do that now. You can see we have the interactive component, these lovely steps. I think they look great. I love pink. It's a great color. But I think these lines would look better black, like they would pop more if they were black. So I'm going to leave some feedback there. It's under the features heading. So if I scroll to the top here, introduction, features, and then there's this thing here, slider container. Now, I'm technical. I know that that is a React component embedded in MDX. If you've got someone, again, from another team who's not technical, maybe they don't really know what this is. Maybe they need to reach out to someone else just to get verification before they can even leave that feedback. I know it's the React components. I'm going to leave my feedback here. I'm going to have to be very specific about my feedback, though, because I don't have any visual cues to actually let the creator know exactly what I'm talking about. Can we change, get my spelling right, change the line that runs down each step to black instead? Cool. And that was kind of drawn out. The non-technical person, like I said, it might not be so easy for them. We can see how we can do it with comments. Super duper easy. I have another preview here. I'm going to log in. I can see Matt's already in here. Scroll down. Here's the component again. I'm going to leave a comment directly on the line. And I'm also going to add a screenshot just targeting the line, just to add that extra bit of context to it. So comments on preview deployments on preview deployments allow us to stay within the context of the page while we're reviewing it. Instead of hopping from preview to PR to leave feedback, like we can leave it right there in the content. And as Matt showed earlier, discussions can take place in comment threads, like right where the comment is being made. And we can be really specific around sharing our feedback if it's related to visual elements. If a diagram or component requires a line to be moved or a color to be changed, we can comment on the line, and the PR creator can then see that comment and know straight away what we mean and where we're talking about without any context switching. And I think most importantly, this feedback can be delivered direct to the developer from a non-technical person. There's no need to be familiar with GitHub or how PRs work. Now, on the docs team, this has made our team way more efficient. We review faster, and it allows stakeholders from across the company to get involved in the process, which is awesome. And that's my demo. I'll hand over to Perry for Q&A.
I'm just going to go through the Q&A and see what we have. A question for Matt. Someone really likes your hat. They want it.
This hat is very precious to me. It's the only one I've got. I like it very much.
It is a great hat. Is commenting available on all account types or just Pro and Enterprise? I can take that. Yeah, commenting is available on all account types. Does the preview URL change with every deployment, or does that link stay up to date itself?
So in the example I gave, I actually put it against a custom domain. When you do a preview deployment, there are two different URLs. One is the long-lived branch URL. So that will stay constant between your deployments to that specific branch. And then there's an individual URL for your exact commit, which is a hash of your commit. So for every deployment, you get two, essentially, and one is long-lived.
Yes. Another question, maybe someone can share their screen real quick just to show again how to get that like contextual browser and device information from a comment, because yes, that information is available with every comment.
Sure thing. Let me just share my screen. Make sure I got the right one. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, in this one, so if we come back up and we open up our thing, so you hover over the time, basically, when the comment was made. So it's contextualized time, and then it will give you the information there.
Nice.
Okay.
While you're here, can you show how to take that screenshot of the exact element that you're trying to comment on?
Yeah, so if we do, let me close this down. Let's get this open. So if we go for something like this one, and then it's this button here, and that's, again, just to be clear, you got to have the, you've got to install a Chrome extension for this. But once you've got that, then you can just hover essentially, and it will take in different elements as you go. And then you click on that.
DOM nodes, doesn't it?
Sorry?
It targets the DOM nodes.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
div, section, aside, whatever, how they're nested.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's see, there's a few questions about responsive layout. So this is also kind of related to the browser information. Or I think specifically like when you resize your screen, do comments persist on the element that you commented on?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't tried that. I think the answer is yes. I know this is fully responsive, so I would expect it to, yes.
Cool. Question about how to add the Slack integration.
Yeah, so if we go into the link, is a link in the chat for the documentation.
Yes.
There's a link within the documentation. There's a whole section on adding that Slack integration.
I'll share that again.
So it's all in there.
Cool. That again. It's a question about how does this fit in with existing feedback flows? I think that's an interesting question, and also something that could potentially have multiple answers depending on how you're currently using feedback. But I think for me, and probably Rich, you might have a different answer. I know like for our marketing and content team, the main way of giving feedback was like heavily relying on someone going through on their own, finding errors or finding things that they would like to iterate on, taking screenshots, putting that in Slack and trying to explain exactly what they're talking about and exactly where on the page they're talking about. So for us, really, we've removed, even though, you know, you do have your Slack integration to help remind you when there's been new feedback added, we're really doing all of this in the preview URL itself. So it really is all in that one place, and it's removed the need to kind of go back and forth or hop on a quick call or share a bunch of screenshots, because everything is just right there attached to the exact element that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same on the doc side as well. We've moved all of our reviews over to preview deployments and comments. I think especially like when we're working with components, sometimes I mean I've done this not even that long ago before we released this feature, was like I would be developing a component to have in the docs, and then I would have to almost have either do a video of me using, like I'm working on it locally, I've got it running locally, and do a video of me using it and then get direct feedback, share that in Slack. Does this look right? How is this kind of thing? Or alternatively, like push it, wait for a build, get the preview deployment, send it to someone, they play with it, then they send me the feedback back, and that kind of loop goes like that. So that's like completely disappeared.
Yeah, I think I would add to that as well is it's just the speed of the feedback loop as well now. So I think we're sort of taking for granted somewhat the preview deployments themselves and how that sped up this deployment flow. But if I look back to previous employers that I've worked with, where you're on a two week sprint, and actually oftentimes the end user would be waiting 2 weeks before they can actually access these preview deployments. Now what we're saying is actually we can send this to you before it's even in a development situation, and you can feedback on it. So it's just super fast. So it's not just where we comment, it's how quickly we can comment and just make sure we're slowing down that we're speeding up that feedback loop and not slowing down the deployments.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, just about the deployments in general. Like, you don't need to set up like a custom staging environment or anything. It just works out of the box. Very exactly. Nice. There's I'm seeing a few comments about like any plans for like Microsoft Teams or like Jira integration. That we do not have that yet, but that is interesting feedback. I guess a good thing to know also is that we are in the beta phase, so all feedback is very welcome at this point for sure. Does this feature affect your account bandwidth? Is that referring to like enterprise maybe? I don't know, but no, I would say no, it does not. Are comments shareable between deployments?
A comment shareable between deployments. I would say, if I'm understanding the question correctly, then the answer is yes. So if I were to trigger a new deployment, so let's run through a use case where we might have, so you've started this PR, you receive the comment, you fix that comment, that will trigger, and you push you fix that bit of feedback, you push your commit to your repository, that will trigger a preview deployment on Vercel. At that point, you're still on the same PR, but you've got two different deployments for that PR, and they're both going to have the same comments on them. So if I'm understanding correctly, the answer is yes, they do persist between deployments as long as they're connected to the same pull request.
Yeah, that's correct.
Nice. There's a question asking if this can break things. The comments themselves, no, they shouldn't break things. And specifically, I think in the PR, when Matt is talking about like the you see like the unresolved comments, like that won't prevent you from deploying or prevent you from merging. Like it's just kind of letting you know that there is unresolved feedback. So yeah, I would say no, it can't break things. Okay, I think that's about it. Just one last thing. Our conference is coming up. So if you haven't already gotten your free ticket, there's still time. October 25th, it's going to be really cool. A lot of new Next.js developments are coming out.